You are listening to the Exceptional Conservative Network. For more information, go to www.theexceptionalconservativeshow.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, I love this young lady. I love having her on every Wednesday night. She is certainly a voice of reckoning for an age of unreckoned. She is certainly one of the great minds in terms of foreign policy. You know her as Janis Hall. We know her as the J. Hall World Report. None other than Janis Hall herself. Good evening, young lady. It's so great to have you here with us tonight.
Hi, how are you doing?
Great, absolutely wonderful. You're preparing for Labor Day, am I correct? You're
kind of, sort of.
You're ready for the summer to end?
Well, I am definitely ready for the summer to end. That is true.
Really? Why?
I think you know why. I like fall. I like cold weather. I don't like the heat.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I'm looking for a steady temperature, 60 to 70, right in there. Don't
yes,
go any further.
That's beautiful.
That's good living. And also the leaves coming down, different colors. I love that. Janis, it seems that we've been talking about Brexit for as long as Britain has existed. Apparently, they never got the memo that we got 4 years ago that you might as well just break away clean, pay the bill and go. What's happening right now in Britain?
All right, so new Prime Minister, Boris Johnson. We thought that was going to happen.
Yeah.
It did happen. Mm-hmm. So, but the big crazy news that happened today was that he wants to basically send everybody on a vacation or suspend Parliament for a good portion of time before the deadline for Brexit. So the deadline for Brexit is supposed to be October 31st. And he said, okay, no deal or no deal, we're going to be leaving the EU, which, a lot of the people who want Brexit are pretty happy with. I'm pretty happy with. I think they should be gone on October 31st. And I think my guess is that in order to make it so that people can't really submarine Brexit, because I'll be honest, I think we all know that many members of Parliament don't want to see Brexit happen. So he's basically saying, okay, you know what? We're just going to all take a vacation. We're not really going to do anything until for most of the month of September. So it's basically like around September 9th or 10th, they're going to go home, and then they're going to come back sometime in the middle of October for a couple of weeks, and then Brexit will happen.
Brilliant. Now, let's just get this out of the way, because you know how the leftists, the liberals, progressive, Marxists, socialists, communists, all the tyrants act here in America. All of a sudden, this has never happened before. How can Prime Minister Boris Johnson ask for this? This is so unusual. Is it unusual for the Queen of England to be asked by a Prime Minister to suspend Parliament?
No, it's not. This is actually a pretty normal occurrence. I think that people didn't think that it would happen because of Brexit and, we should all be working before it. But it's not really that unusual for it to happen. I will say that pretty much hardly anybody's actually pleased about this. So the Remainers are unhappy because obviously they would like to have a deal. They would well, they don't even want a deal. They would just like to extend that deadline so that they're still in the European Union come November 1st.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think even a significant portion of the Brexiters themselves would also like to probably have some kind of a deal or something. So they're also not particularly happy about it either. And it does kind of throw British politics into a bit of chaos. There could be, they could vote to dissolve Parliament. They could vote to have new elections. There's a lot of things that could happen.
Mm-hmm.
I don't actually think that will happen. And I would say that I think that this is probably a good move by Boris Johnson, given the fact that probably most of the people in that room don't want it to happen.
Exactly. So what we're looking at is at the end of October, Boris Johnson writes a check for $50 billion to the EU and tells them to cut bait, good luck, enjoy life. We're not paying for this. But he met last week at the G7, or earlier this week at the G7 with President Trump. Is there a deal under works where England won't miss any of the money that they pay out to the European Union, a trade deal to upset England, to upset the Chinese?
That is probably. I think that Trump has said that he wants a deal with the UK. Trump really likes trade. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, of all of the things that a president can do, he's just really big about the trade. He loves the economy stuff. Okay, so I think that he probably is. I know that we are working on something with Japan. My guess is that we are probably working with something also with the UK, even though it's not necessarily public.
Mm-hmm. Now, I want to ask you here because Xi and Donald Trump are virtual twin bed, mattress beds, whatever those little beds were when I was growing up. I can't figure out what they
Bunk
are.
beds?
Yeah, they're bunk bed mates. And thank you very much. You understand me. You really do.
Bunk mates.
bunk, bunk mates. They're bunk mates, pretty much. Except for this week, when it looked like Xi Jinping is worried about Hong Kong, number one, being a stimulator for unrest throughout the rest of China, and then getting the news that businesses are beginning to leave China's mainland and as well Hong Kong, and they're flying to Vietnam, they're flying to other places in the South China Sea to avoid the tariffs. So he's getting stuck with the bill at this point. I got to ask you here, will we see a deal eventually? And has Donald Trump really checkmated Xi Jinping on this particular matter?
Well, I think that we will see a deal. I think that there's kind of no other way to go about it than to have one. I wouldn't necessarily say that Trump has checkmated him exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Trump has put more pressure on China to behave appropriately in terms of trade than any president for decades.
Amen.
And Chinese are understandably upset by this. They, have been able to. So, I think that eventually they'll come around. I think that there will be. I think that both Trump and Xi both want a deal. It's just a matter of what it's going to cost before we get there, and what it's going to look like.
Now everyone's running around with their chicken, like a chicken with the head chopped off, on Wall Street. because on September 1, the end of this week, tariffs, huge tariffs, go into place on China because they didn't play the game right. That we had an agreement in May, and all of a sudden they walked away from it in June, and they haven't come back to the table with anything of any substance. And now people are saying that those tariffs are going to really begin to impact American businesses. Uh, there's a lot of fear that those tariffs are going to lead us into a recession, although they're very nominal when you look at the data per se. Who should we fear more when it comes to this trade conversation? Should we fear China more, or should we fear the leftists here in the U.S. and the American media?
Well, I think that we should not be fearing the leftists and the American media, regardless of what the topic is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think that it's premature to say that this will damage the economy. I've said it before, one of the great things about the American economy is that it is so diverse. And the economy is quite strong right now. People are pretty happy. Wall Street might not be as content as perhaps Market Street, as they would say, but I'd say most people are pretty happy right now. And it's possible, that we'll see some increase in prices, that some sectors will be affected, but my guess is on the whole, it won't make that much difference to most people.
Mm-hmm. I think when we look at the leftists here and the American media, they're very short-sighted. They can only see, their hand before their face. And I really applaud Donald Trump on doing the side deals with Japan. And I know they're doing a side deal with the UK to arrest any concerns about them falling into any problems. But also beginning to work with the Latin American countries to make certain that we find places there for American businesses to sow their manufacturing roots and also meet the immigration concern. If you put businesses there, they can make profit. We can all make profit. We'll have a great economy. We'll all do well. I want to ask you, before we go to the break, about North Korea. And word came out 48 hours ago that North Korea is preparing to build a nuclear submarine. The same country that can't feed the poor and can't provide lights at night, they're building a nuclear. Doesn't this put the fear in Donald Trump and his foreign policy towards North Korea?
Well, all right, I'll say I have two things to say on that. One is it's not good, right? We would prefer if they did not build a submarine of any kind. So there's that. I don't necessarily think that Trump at the current state should be too fearful of North Korea in general. The second thing that I would say is that, nuclear subs, the Russians didn't, they had issues with theirs. Okay? And bad things have happened to nuclear. It'll work as well as the North Koreans think it will.
That blast, speaking of Russia, that blast, which has been taking off all of the concerns of the leftist media here, they had a nuclear blast recently as a result of sending a missile up and it exploded, and they turned off all the monitoring devices so that people couldn't see the radioactivity. Number one, are the people of Russia happy with Putin at this particular point? And then number two, aren't there some major concerns when a nation like Russia, maybe even China, could do that, putting at risk people around those particular countries?
All right, a couple things there. So the U.S. has always been pretty good with our nuclear technology. We
Yeah.
really have not had a problem. I think that that's kind of a testament to, our consciousness and our commitment to safety. That is not necessarily the case in other countries, specifically Russia, known as the Soviet Union back in the day, and along the way. And it's yes, it is concerning when something in Russia or North Korea or China affects the world. That's true. On the other hand, I do also sort of, there are just things that we can't control everything,
Mm-hmm.
and this is almost one of them. It's like, you know what, we can't control everything. We can really only control what we do. And what I would definitely prefer if the Russians weren't having nuclear disasters. That would be better for everyone.
Wouldn't it?
But it would. But at the same time, it's not something that I or even the U.S. can really control very well. I think that we do what we can. I think that we monitor on stuff, and we do our with what we have. But at the same time, there is some we don't have control. I know that's a terrible thing to say. Oh my gosh, the U.S. is not having control. That is the case.
Exactly. Ladies and gentlemen, Janis Hall, the J Hall Report with us tonight. We'll be right back with more of that. There's a lot going on around the world. And in fact, ladies and gentlemen, Australia is a big concern. And there are some other things that are happening around the world that we're really. Did you like the suits that Trudeau was wearing at the G7? Those are nice suits. Really nice. They pay well in Canada, don't they?
Yeah.
Okay, we missed that. All right, but we'll be right back with more of the best right after these messages.